From the moment I took my first steps onto the frigid mountaintops outside the city of Kyovashad in Diablo IV, it was clear that Blizzard was serious about responding to some of the complaints of Diablo III. While Diablo III contrasted pops of bright colors against its grotesque horrors of the world, Diablo IV is immediately more oppressive and dire in its presentation. Its hues are muted and grey, its world uninviting and harsh, its stories seemingly primed to expose the worst parts of its characters, and yet it doesn't seek to leave everything of its former entry behind. In many ways, this early slice of Diablo IV offered a good sense of how most of the mechanical changes introduced in Diablo III and more recently Diablo Immortal have been smartly iterated on to maintain exciting action with the satisfaction of flexible character construction. Atmosphere is just one facet where Diablo IV is immediately distinct from the series' previous entry. Diablo III's approach to class builds was divisive, with the far more streamlined approach to ability choices stifling creativity in some cases. Diablo IV rectifies this in some smart ways while still retaining approachability. The skill tree is made up of distinct nodes, with each one splintering outwards with numerous abilities and associated upgrades. Investing points anywhere in the skill tree works towards unlocking the next node and more abilities, giving you flexibility in how you reach each one. Being able to easily respec is core to the freedom that Diablo IV is designed to give players. At any point, you can choose to use gold to refund points spent on a specific ability, or redo your skill tree entirely. There's no special merchant you need to visit or scarce resources you need to gather. While the cost is still being iterated on, game director Joe Shelley explained in an interview that this decision was made to encourage players to personalize their builds throughout their time with the game. Player choice is extended to overall progression through Diablo IV's story too, with Blizzard adopting a non-linear approach to how events unfold. Once I had reached the first main town of Kyovashad and linked up with some key characters, I was given the choice of 3 main story missions to pursue. 2 of them, which weren't available in this build of the game, were situated quite far away in entirely new regions that required a slightly higher level character than I was currently at. The other was conveniently close by, but this approach demonstrated that Lilith's influence and the order in which you experience its spread doesn't have to be the same as another player's. While you are pushed to play them in a specific order according to the character level that each one suggests, there's nothing stopping you from not engaging with the most readily available one, leveling up through other content and continuing down a different path. It's an approach that acknowledges that many Diablo players don't always perceive the game's story with the same importance as others, and it's a fact that Blizzard is acknowledging, so much so that once you complete the story at least once with a single character, subsequent runs with any of your characters won't require you to engage with the story at all. Instead, you can opt out of it entirely once you start a new campaign, immediately opening towns to other players you'll encounter dynamically online, and freeing up dungeons for you to explore that might have otherwise been tied up in story-specific encounters. To supplement this playstyle, Diablo IV offers a wealth of additional content you can engage with to level up and acquire critical loot. These are broken down into numerous categories, each of which describes the level of challenge they provide and the potential rewards they offer. Sellers, for example, are short combat encounters that could have been mini-bosses in larger dungeons, offering small but sometimes important pieces of random loot as rewards. Dungeons, which were plentiful around just the small areas of the fractured peaks that I was allowed to roam in, are much more involved. They're familiar mazes with multiple levels, all of which you can now explore seamlessly without loading from one portion to the next. Diablo IV's open world structure supports the litany of side quests and events that it has to offer, with a much stronger sense of exploration in just the first portion of the map I was allowed to move through. Each of the game's 5 larger regions is segmented into multiple smaller ones, each with their own twisting routes that funnel you in one cardinal direction or another. Moving through these spaces provides some nice visual distinction between each area, from wet and rainy bogs to snow-covered peaks and gloomy barren forests. They also let you poke and prod at each corner, uncovering pockets of tough enemies to challenge, new dungeons to explore, cellars to pillage, and a variety of public events that you can share with other players. you also earn Renown, an alternative resource to experience simply by interacting with the world, whether it's finding new towns and waypoints, completing public events, or engaging in side quests and more. Renown unlocks rewards once you've accrued enough, with instant gold and experience bounties, but also more permanent upgrades, such as the number of healing vials you can carry. These unlocks persist between characters, meaning you won't have to uncover the entire map again, or engage with loads of world events with a new character when you're just trying to quickly get to the endgame, which seems like a good decision. The density and intricacy of Diablo IV's world feels drastically different from the linear design of Diablo III's, which, despite having some open areas, always felt like it was pushing you in one direction towards the next big story beat, never mind the drastic cuts between regions when shifting from one act to another. The entire map of Diablo IV is described as larger than most previous maps combined, and just this small taste of the fractured peaks strongly suggested that to be true. Diablo IV's dynamic open-world events, which act like public events that you find in a game like Destiny 2, are shared with other players that seamlessly pop in and out of your server. Unlike Diablo Immortal, for example, you won't choose a specific server to play on. Rather, Diablo IV's regions are all their own separate instances with varying numbers of players in each, meaning you'll gracefully transition from one densely populated area to a more sparsely populated one without realizing it. The populated regions and presence of other players feeds into open world activities that require more cooperation. Strongholds are challenging combat instances with distinct objectives that take place in camps with enemies a step or two above your current level. Other events, such as endgame world bosses, which weren't in this build, indicated that Blizzard sees value in weaving these larger social experiences into the most important facets of Diablo's core loop, and that they are activities you'll likely need to engage in if you're interested in play beyond just the story. If you are focused mostly on narrative, however, you can take solace in the fact that those missions are only open to you and your selected party, so you don't have to worry about a random player joining for the ride. It's these live service elements and some of the hints at endgame content encounters that suggest a long tail is being planned for Diablo IV, which should come as no surprise given how long Blizzard has actively supported its predecessor. Yet, in speaking with GameSpot, executive producer Rod Ferguson seemed apologetic for how he felt Blizzard underserved the Diablo community at the time, vowing to change that over the many years the developer plans to support Diablo IV with new content including expansions, seasonal events, and more. If this brief slice is meant to serve as a teaser for the foundations of that ambition, then Diablo IV seems on the right track. It's so far delivering on its promise of giving players far more agency than before in how they both play and build their favorite characters, while also providing more ways to tackle content and choose the activities that interest them first. That might not sound overtly original, but within the context of the series over the last decade, it's a drastic and so far welcome departure that I'm both curious and excited to explore more of. For our full impressions with our time hands-on with Diablo IV, as well as interviews with key members of the development team, head to GameSpot.com.